How does the VA rate chronic fatigue syndrome? So VA disability ratings for chronic fatigue syndrome are between 0 and 100%. And there's breaks at 10, 20, 40, and 60. That's the way they rate it. And you're going to get one of those numbers if you win your claim. So it's good to know like what range you're in, right? This is a good claim to file. I outlined some circumstances, mainly being a Gulf War veteran, where you might have a little better chance, but you need to have the diagnosis, nexus, and the symptoms, or you're not going to get the higher rating. But looking good so far. A 10% disability rating for chronic fatigue syndrome. Waxes and wanes, but causes periods of incapacitation of at least 1, but less than 2 weeks a year, or controllable by medication. So this is kind of a funny one here because it says it's not curable, which means, there's no like magic pill medication, but they have it codified in law. So if you're taking medication and it controls it, 10% rating. Chronic fatigue syndrome comes down to how much it's incapacitating. And that was what I wanted to answer Mark with here. So 4 to 5 naps a day can mean a lot of different things. This isn't 4 to 5 naps a day. This is you don't get out of bed at all that day for 4 to 5 days. That's what my life is like. I know I look all chipper and stuff on the videos, but you don't see me when I'm not making videos. That's why I make them when I feel good. And when I'm not feeling good, I'm not doing anything. I don't get out of bed. 10% rating is periods of incapacitation, not getting out of bed and doing anything at all for at least 1 week, but less than 2 weeks. 20% VA disability rating for chronic fatigue syndrome. Nearly constant and restricts routine daily activities by less than 25% of pre-illness level. And results in periods of incapacitation of 2 to 4 weeks per year. So there's a couple things going on with the ratings here and in the rating schedule. So we have the amount of weeks going up, but the verbiage is changing. So in this one, it says less than 25% of pre-illness activities and 2 to 4 weeks per year, where you're just laid out incapacitated. So when you're talking about this to your doctor, getting your diagnosis, getting your symptoms, you need to be talking about 25% less, like I do a lot less, and be specific, not 19%. I just, and you don't want to say too much because you're not a doctor, you're a layman. Like half the time I don't do stuff. That's like a layman would say something like that. And then you have to be specific about the weeks because they're going to ask you. So 6 weeks out of the year, I'm out. I don't move. Whatever it is for you. So knowing the rating criteria and how the VA rates it, look at what you have and then figure out how you're going to go sell it to a doctor, your doctor, and then you have to sell it to the VA. 40% VA disability rating for chronic fatigue syndrome. Nearly constant and restricts routine daily activities to 50 to 75% of pre-illness levels. So now we have from 25 to 50 between the 20% and 40% rating criteria. And then this has you laid out for at least 4 weeks per year, but less than 6 weeks per year. So that's the 40% rating. The 60% rating is nearly constant and restricts routine daily activities to less than 50% of the pre-illness level. That's probably where I got the 50% from. That's kind of what it's like compared to my old me that wasn't all fatigued out all the time. Wax and wanes, right? Results in periods of incapacitation of at least 6 weeks total duration per year. Again, this has changed a little bit. How much you're incapacitated. The first 3 ratings, they had, 1 to 2 weeks or 2 to 4 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks. At the 60% level, they just say at 6 weeks, it just says at least 6 weeks. It doesn't say 6 to 8, it doesn't keep going up. Again, look at the CFR. I'll put a link below so you can look at all the rating criteria because whatever you're filing a disability claim for, it's good for you to know what criteria you need to meet for what rating you're going after. And then, how hard is this going to be to prove? What evidence do I need? All that kind of stuff, right? It's just good. And, there's a lot of disabilities that you think should be paid more and they're not. And then you can make an informed decision. I want to get recognized for my disability. I mean, that's one way to file a claim. If you want to be recognized, you do that in the military. VA doesn't hand out awards and badges and stuff like that. So recognition isn't a good reason to file a claim. Getting paid is a good reason. So if this doesn't pay, move on to something else. You have chronic fatigue syndrome. You're in some weird third world country with CFS and unexplained things. I guarantee you have things in your body you have no clue about. And then to make it even harder to understand, you're going to have MUCMEs, medically unexplained chronic multi-symptom illnesses that not even a doctor can put a finger on. But, they're capable to be like, well, it might be this because they could do the medical opinion. And then 100% VA disability rating for chronic fatigue syndrome is nearly constant and so severe as to restrict routine activities almost completely. So this one's open for interpretation almost completely. We've been talking in the other ratings, the 10, 20, 40, and 60, it's been defining how many weeks of incapacitation. This one is almost completely. So we're talking months, 6 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year. Depends on what you have. So let's define incapacitating. The VA is talking about bed rest and medication, even though there's no medical cure or any cure for chronic fatigue syndrome. So the VA does a lot of double talk stuff. So you have to figure out what that actually means. And if you don't understand it, you're going to have problems selling it to the doctor. So pick claims that are clear. Whatever they are, using tinnitus as the example, which I know that one's not clear and it gets denied, but it started while I was on active duty at this date or this time frame, and it just kept ringing. And yeah, I'm 70 now, and it's been ringing for 70 years or 50 years. It's easy to understand that one because you know what the rating criteria is, you know what they're looking for, you know how to do the nexus and all that stuff. Some of these Gulf War illness claims, a doctor can't even put their finger on it. I'm not saying don't pursue them, just be aware they can be tricky, but they can also be lucrative. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you in the next video. If you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp. And if you need medical evidence, which is a huge part of a medical disability claim, contact my med team. There's a link for both in the description.